Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Hi there, my friend. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. It's not an easy one, but I hope that it gives you courage and insight and comfort and some laughter, believe it or not. Yes, it's about facing a terminal illness with someone you love. And for me, it was with my father. And I'm going to tell that story as we go along, but I will apologize if this goes long. It was very cathartic for me to do this. It's been quite a while since my dad passed away, and yet writing out what my thoughts were or what the points were I wanted to share with you as I walked into one of the 10 hardest things I've ever done. And it just sort of all came back like it happened yesterday. So I'm going to get on with it. And if you need to take a break, but come back and listen all the way to the end. I have tips along the way, a lot of tips toward the end, trying to remember everything that I learned and everything that I did that left me with no regrets. So here we go. So there comes a time in life when the roles quietly shift. The strong hands that once carried you, are now frail in yours. And the voice that once called your name with certainty has grown into a whisper. And you realize you're not just witnessing the end of a life, but that you're being invited into the most sacred form of love, the privilege of walking someone home. I remember the moment the same way that I remember moments like when the Challenger blew up or when I first heard about the events unfolding on 9/11. For me, it was a normal July day. I was sitting in my office getting some work caught up. My dad was going to a doctor's appointment that morning. Then he and my mom were off to visit my uncle in Western North Carolina. They were so excited for their little road trip. Now, at this point, my dad was 87 years old. My mom was 83. And I had a brief moment where I wondered if it was safe for them to drive by themselves, if they'd be okay. I mean, they were 87 and 83, and off they went like teenagers, excited about this road trip. And I kept reminding myself that they were indeed doing well and showed no signs of being their actual age. So I had hugged them goodbye that morning and didn't expect to hear from them until they arrived at my uncle's house. But then the phone rang. It was my mom. She said, "We have an update. Dad's appointment wasn't routine at all." It turned out that the prostate cancer he'd been living with for almost 18 years had metastasized. I was trying to process what that meant, and I asked, "So what treatment do we need to do?" And there was a pause. She said it spread into his lower spine, his bones, and there were some spots on his lungs. The treatment will buy some time, but will rob him of quality time, and that's what he's choosing instead. So what does that mean? And she said, it means it's time that he gets his house in order. And I asked, did they say anything more? Do we have a timeline? I couldn't wrap my brain around what I was hearing. And then she said, they said 6 months. By this time, my head was spinning. My face was flushed. The tears were swelling in my eyes that I wanted to hide from my mom, who was being stoic in giving me this news. So I said, well, give me, 15 minutes. I'll be right home. And she said, oh no, they were already on the road. They were still planning to go on their trip. She said the ride would give them time to talk about it, and it will be good for them to be with my aunt and uncle. They were always on a mission to cheer someone else up, and that did them good as well. So I said, okay. And I tried to distract myself with work, but obviously I couldn't. They drove west. I drove home, numb. My mind was racing and my heart was breaking. I feared losing my dad for almost my entire life. He was bigger than life to me, and I couldn't imagine walking the earth without his guidance and love here with me. By the time the news had become nothing more than a bad dream, my parents pulled into the driveway, returning from their weekend away. I ran out to greet them. They were full of cheers and good wishes from my aunt and uncle. I had made dinner and told them to get settled and unpack, and that they could tell us all about their trip over dinner. They said that was perfect and headed into their little in-law suite on the lower level of our home. I walked away from them feeling a knot in my stomach. Why couldn't I make eye contact with my dad? Why did that hug feel superficial? Why was I avoiding him? This was not going to be easy. So the initial coping mechanism for anyone when they get the news of a terminal illness or just hearing the words, it's time to get your house in order, it's to go into a few stages of grief. It could be denial, anger, bargaining, depression, or acceptance. Those according to Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. She made the model of the 5 stages of grief. For me, they were not in any kind of linear order, but I was clear that I had gone into denial. My sadness was being suppressed, and soon it was going to turn into depression. I didn't want any of that to show, so I was avoidant of my father. I never had felt such a conflict going on inside, wanting to spend every single last minute of the time we had left with him right there beside him and right there supporting my mom. But I could barely stand to be with either of them. I didn't want him to feel my grief. I didn't want him to see my tears or have to feel his own. I was so distraught. I was coping the best I could while still running a household, keeping things as normal as I could for all my kids that were still at home. It was something I had been juggling to do anyway with my kids and the ones that were still at home. But right now, this felt impossible. I was in the beginning stages of my coaching program during that time, and I had a call scheduled with my mentor that week. It was perfect timing. As she answered my call, I broke down in tears, letting my emotions finally be witnessed and heard. She created such a safe place for me. And after getting past the enormous sadness and toward the end of our call together, she said to me, Jenny, you have to grieve him now so you can be with him on this journey. He will have many gifts to give to you, things to share with you. He will still be teaching you. But if you don't get through your grief now, you won't be able to be present with him. She gave me my homework, which was, protocol for our coaching calls. And it was the hardest thing I ever even heard her say. I want you to write his eulogy now. If you need to, write his obituary first, but write his eulogy. Then I want you to write a letter to him, letting him know your deepest feelings about what it meant to have him as your father. Just saying that caused a wellspring of tears that burned down my cheeks. The thought of it was almost more than I could bear, but she was right. Somewhere under the knot still in my stomach, I knew she was right. I had to get this out. I had to get my grief out. I had to feel it. I had to witness it. I had to come to terms with it. Since then, I've shared that advice with so many friends, family, and clients who were grateful to have that process or something close to it. What this is known as anticipatory grief. It's a mourning the loss of a person who is still alive. Let me tell you, it was intense. My brother flew in from Arizona to see our mom and dad, but to also give me the support I needed emotionally. It was nice to have my big brother here, knowing this was going to be so hard for me. He told me, go upstairs, take all the time that you need. He said, be by yourself, cry as many tears as you need to, do what you need to do. And I got to tell you, that was such a huge gift to me. So if you are a relative who is not the primary or even secondary caregiver, don't underestimate the huge value you bring by showing up, sometimes just to offer relief or support, but showing up, not just for the dying, but for the one who's taking care of them. That weekend, my husband held down the rest of the house and the routine for the couple of days that my brother was here. I went upstairs and began with a hot bath and soft music, and I let myself sit in the tub and cry until there were no more tears to be cried. I knew I had just run out. I dried myself off and put on my best comfy clothes, and I crawled into bed and took a long afternoon nap that ran into a very restless night of sleep. The next morning, I went on a long walk by myself, needing to sort out my thoughts and feelings and fears and even my desires, wondering what I wanted this to look like for me, wondering what Dad wanted it to look like for him. I worked my way into a level of acceptance, and through that acceptance came more grief. I came back, my legs feeling heavy as lead, my body aching all over. I took another long, hot Epsom salt bath, followed by another long nap. The quiet space to write my dad's eulogy was exactly what I needed after getting through so many of those feelings of grief. Yes, I cried again and again, but I finished it. And that night I read it to my husband, crying my way through it, and then watching the tears fall from his eyes as he listened. If you are on this journey right now with any kind of terminal illness with someone that you love dearly, I cannot recommend doing this exercise enough. You don't even have to use this as a eulogy, but give yourself time to grieve and write. As hard as it was, it cleared out so much for me and allowed me to be present with my dad and with my mom, with authenticity and with honesty and grace, exactly what my mentor had told me to expect. The next day, my brother said goodbye, but I felt a renewed sense of strength and courage that I knew I could now face all of this. I could face it with my dad, not alongside of him, but with him, really be with him. And I could let that honesty exist between us once again. So often we can fall into the busyness or the nervous energy activities that prevent us from the very thing our loved one needs. We don't want to be there to fix their pain, but to walk beside them in it. We're not there to judge if they should choose or not choose to continue treatment. Being emotionally available, even in silence. It gives us the opportunity to offer our presence simply by being in the room with them, holding hands, maybe reading a book or listening to music they love. And this one's really huge. Not imposing your beliefs or wishes or what you think will make them feel better. Don't impose that onto them or onto their needs or onto their desires. It's so tempting and it sneaks up. For example, insisting on something instead of listening to what they say they really want, because that just disregards their request. Maybe you don't know better, and maybe what they used to love isn't something that they love right now. They give so much of that up along the way that it's important for you to pay attention. It's an important part of the journey to find a balance of sitting with them, sitting in silence, or reminiscing with them and giving them the time they need to say what it is they want or need and to be alone and work toward their own level of acceptance. So be mindful of that as you find your own pace and your own balance. The oncologist had suggested that they contact hospice as soon as possible to get used to them, their presence, to get started on the journey. It was another layer of reality. Hospice, I thought that you only called them at the end, forgetting that 6 months is kind of the end. Both of my parents came from a medical field and they were realists, so following his suggestions were the first order of business. It was hard to imagine my dad was dying of terminal cancer, and you'd never know it to look at him. He was vibrant. He was still cracking jokes and making us laugh. He enjoyed all the foods that we were serving him, and soon anticipating the college football games. Nothing had really changed on the outside, even though everything had changed on the inside. Here's some universal truths that hospice teaches. There is no right way to do this. Saying I love you is never wasted. Silence can be sacred. And peace is possible even in parting. I read it in the brochure or the literature they left us and wondered if that could all be true. Was peace really possible in death? Was I really going to be okay sitting in silence with him? I used to talk as a way of avoiding the silence, not yet knowing the sacredness of it. There was too much truth in the silence for me, I guess. But okay, I will let silence become sacred. The hospice nurse arrived, and of course, she fell in love with my dad. It was important for all of us to get to know all the caregivers along the way so we could be comfortable with them coming in and out of our home. She explained they would not be any more intrusive than was necessary, and they were here for the family, not just for my dad. I admit we all did feel better after her initial visit. Someone surely was going to guide us through this unknown territory, so I was grateful. And I was grateful that we began our journey with them sooner rather than waiting until later. I would have waited until the very last day had they asked me, so I'm really glad they didn't ask. These women, these hospice nurses became our hope, our comfort, yes, our peace, and yes, our friends. Their next visit came 2 weeks later. Dad was still feeling pretty good, but starting to have some pain in his lower back. They gave him a medication to reduce the inflammation, and it really boosted his energy. I came downstairs and met him dancing his way down the hallway one day, going back and forth, singing, snapping his fingers, and dancing. I'll spare you the song, but it's going on in my head right now. I was so grateful for that moment, for that memory, to see him so alive and so happy. The nurse said that we may want to start thinking about a walker to help support him as that pain gets more intense. And she said she'd bring one with her on her next visit, just in case it's needed. It took away some of that joy I had felt, thinking, he's not dying. He looks great. But yes, soon he'll need a walker. Her next visit was in 2 weeks. 1 month will be gone. I thought 5 left to go. It was already going too fast. I felt my anticipatory grief coming back. I had to take another day of self-care, a bath, a nap, another good cry, another night's sleep. How in the world was my mom doing it? When was she grieving? I needed to check on her too the next day. So his long-term health insurance policy allowed for medical equipment to be purchased. So we purchased a lift chair and a few other items that would make life easier. Eventually, we used it to purchase a really good hospital bed, making it easier for him to get in and out of bed. If you yourself haven't considered getting long-term life insurance, please do. Listen to my previous podcast. I think it's episode 39, and you'll learn why that's so important. If you do have it, don't hesitate to use it, but make a plan for how those benefits are going to be used to make it all the way through, if possible. Bob and I decided we would put a camera in their living room area so that if we were upstairs and we needed to see if they were okay, we could keep watch over them while we were away. And we had a baby monitor in their bedroom and ours, so we could hear them call out to us for backup if something was needed. Both of those proved to be really good investments to have. It brought us a lot of peace, but yes, there were times where my mom yelled for help when my dad had tried to get out of his bed and found out that he couldn't stand up. He was too weak and he fell to the floor. He was fine. My mom, not so much. So those things proved to be good investments. I was doing my best to stay close to him and spend as much time with him as possible. I quit working at our office. I hired our daughter to sit in my place while I took care of my dad. Relatives and friends began asking, when can we come for a visit? So I took over the calendar of Dad's doctor's appointments, family activities, visits from friends and family, his medicine routine, his blood pressure each morning. It was kind of like running a hospital and a bed and breakfast all at the same time. We loved having family and friends come to visit. And of course, seeing this parade of people coming for a weekend, a day, an afternoon, just to see him once again and to let him know how he touched their lives. Well, it was a gift to us. Every weekend held a visit, a sacred reunion. And I watched my dad light up with each person's presence. After the first couple of months, I also saw his energy fade after each visit. It was getting harder. Soon the holidays were up ahead. 4 months in, he was doing much better than we had expected. He certainly didn't look like he was on death's doorstep. We got through the holidays with memories and smiles and warmth. Dad was in a wheelchair now, but we had a good system for meeting his needs while preserving all his dignity that we could. Hospice came daily, assisting with bathing and spending time chatting with him. His daily hospice nurse would sit with him and would hear them bellowing with laughter for a good hour after he was all settled from his shower. Those nurses were angels. One day, my dad announced that he wanted a guy's morning out, just him and the boys. So my husband loaded him up with my 3 sons, and they were off to a breakfast at IHOP, my dad's request. He had been watching commercials, apparently, about all-you-can-eat pancakes, and it just sounded so good to him. So off they went. They had a great adventure together. They got him home, and they got him back in bed so he could rest. And it turned out to be my dad's very last outing. It was one made of joy and cherished memories all around. So here's another important tip if you're on this journey. Don't be so overprotective you don't allow them to experience whatever joy their heart desires. Make it happen. Make that want, that desire, that dream, make it happen. I heard from the sister of a friend who passed away a few years ago. And she said that my friend had wanted to go to the ocean side and watch the sun set again over the Pacific. So she loaded her wheelchair up and she drove her sister from Portland, Oregon to Cannon Beach. And she got her to the place where they could overlook the ocean and sat together watching the sunset. She had wanted to get there so that she could see the green flash of a sunset. Her sister said they saw it. She even managed to catch it on her camera. I didn't even know what the green flash of a sunset was, but I looked it up, and it's this one brief moment where the light reflects back across the ocean water and flashes, a green flash, just a little one, just a moment in time. She said, as hard as it was and as scary as it was to know that she wasn't sure it was safe to take her sister all that way, she never regretted giving her that last wish. We talked to my dad about his funeral. He had very strong terms that were to be met. First of all, he said, the word funeral doesn't start out with F-U-N by accident, so he wanted it to be a funeral. He said there was a time for reverence and a time for fun. He said, shed our tears and say our prayers, and then give a fond farewell, but go home, have a big family celebration picnic, and have fun. He also said to have his funeral the second Saturday after his passing. He wanted to give everyone time to make travel plans and not have to rush. Even that conversation made us laugh. And I'm so glad I wrote his eulogy early on because I would have avoided this one for sure. And it was a very important conversation. So if you can, ask, what do they prefer? Don't assume you know. So much changes in those last months and weeks. My dad truly did have all of his affairs in order. He reviewed all of it with me. He had already done so with my mom. He had even paid for the funeral years prior. So in case you didn't know this, you can prepay at the current rate of funerals, and then the policy will be honored no matter how many years ahead it was before you passed away. My husband and I both vowed that we would do that. And I have to admit here, we have yet to do it. But gosh, it was so great. It's a great benefit for those you leave behind. We just had like a deed that said to the funeral home, everything's been paid for, and he was very well taken care of. Well, by now we had already surpassed the 6-month mark. So we were clearly on borrowed time. Dad could no longer stand up or walk, so he stayed in bed. We all had a routine of time with him. My mom making his breakfast and talking to him while she got ready for the day. I took over with lunch and afternoons, encouraging mom to get hair appointments and pedicures and have lunch with a friend just to be out. Bob took the dinner shift and sitting with Dad after he fed him his dinner until Dad could no longer stay awake. It was our hope, and Dad's hope too, that we could keep him at home as long as possible. He was quite comfortable and very well cared for as long as all of us could keep going with what we were doing, and no one wanted to stop. During his last month, things seemed to go quickly. He slept for longer periods of time. His appetite changed. He'd close his eyes, sometimes even when he wasn't sleeping, as if to say, I need to be left to myself for a while. So just remember, they too need time for quiet contemplation and to recognize they too are grieving. They need time for life reviews. They need time to think about any regrets or amends or any unfinished business. So it is really important to give them space, but not too much. And it's okay to ask them about all of these things. I found that asking questions like, Dad, are you afraid? Is there anything here that you need done that hasn't been taken care of? Would you like me to call someone or write a letter to anyone for you? Is there anything I need to know or to do after you're gone? Do you know how very much I love you? It's good to sit with them, hold their hands, look them in the eyes, ask them these questions. It's also important to remember it's okay to talk to them even if they can't respond, and to remember that they can still hear every word even if they're sound asleep. Stay calm when you're around them. Keep conflicts and drama out of their proximity. You want to maintain a peaceful and calm environment, one that allows them to lead the pace of that goodbye. So now for a funny story or two to lighten this topic. All of dying is not a sacred silence. Remember that laughter is sacred too. My dad loved good humor and he loved joking around with people, especially my husband, who was very gullible. One night, Bob took his plate of dinner in to him. It was meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans, one of his favorite dinners. He looked at Bob and whispered, "Do you think Jenny could make me some pancakes and sausage?" One thing to know is that the sweet is the last taste to go. So even though that dinner was once one of my dad's very favorites, we knew we had to shift to what his taste preferred. So, of course, I said yes to the sweet request of pancakes and sausage. And of course, Dad proving that we have to stay on our toes, like things do change. And he just seemed to be amused with himself for making this request. So, of course, I put his plate aside. I ran upstairs and I whipped up pancakes and sausage and I brought it down for Bob to help feed Dad his dinner. Mom and I sat in the living room watching Jeopardy when suddenly Bob yelled for me to come quick. I thought Dad might be choking, and I jumped up and I ran into the bedroom. And there was Dad looking at me with a twinkle in his eye. Bob said, "I can't understand what he's trying to say. He's whispering and I can't make out what he's saying. I just keep hearing him calling your name. He keeps repeating something and I hear him say Jenny. And so he wants to tell you something. It's probably something very important." And so I leaned down and I looked at Dad and I said, yes, Dad, what is it?" And he whispered again something that neither Bob nor I could understand. And he was growing much weaker, having to repeat himself. So I said, "Dad, I'm trying. Please repeat it one more time slowly." And I leaned in to where my ear was just outside his lips. And I heard him whisper, "Is this Jimmy Dean sausage?" Well, I burst out laughing. Bob could only hear the Jimmy of that question and thought he was saying Jenny, so he had called me to come quick. My dad was laughing all the way through the rest of his dinner over that one. There were also tender moments, the ones where he let me know that the time was approaching quickly. I was saying goodnight to him. He would say to me, "I'm all packed and I'm ready to go." Puzzled about what he was saying, I asked, "What do you mean, Dad? Packed for where?" He gazed deep into my eyes and he said, "I'm going across the mystic sea." And he smiled. Anticipating his death at this point was harder the closer it became. He'd sleep for long periods of time, wake up hungry, then eat and go back to sleep. We had put a bell by his bedside, one of those silver dome-shaped bell that you hit by pressing on the top of it. He'd sleep sometimes for 24 hours straight and then suddenly would hear the bell. At one point, I sat beside him and asked him if there was anything he was worried about, anything at all. He shared one concern that was intimate about what he was worried about, and we talked about it until he felt a little bit more at peace. That night, he had a dream and he shared it with me the next day, all excited to tell me about it. And he said, Jenny, last night I met John the Baptist, and he told me that I didn't have to worry about what I was concerned about. And he told me why. And my dad was definitely at peace now. I asked him, how'd you know it was John the Baptist? I don't know if I know what he looks like, but he knew. Another funny story that apparently is not necessarily my dad nor Bob who could determine when it was time for us to depart and how this all worked as we continued to anticipate what this was going to look like, when it was going to happen, how it was going to happen. Bob had finished helping him eat his dinner one night. Again, my mom and I sitting in the other room. And I heard my dad say to Bob, Bob, do you see that over there? And he had apparently pointed to the floor near his dresser. Bob said, no, Dad, what are you seeing? My dad described a very white light, he said, and it's growing larger. And then he could see that it was actually looked like a tunnel of light. He said it was beautiful. And he said, I'm trying to figure out how to get to it. So Bob asked, well, what can I do to help you get to it? Not fully understanding what he was seeing. He wondered if it was the way the sunlight was hitting part of his dresser. Where was the light even coming from? Or, as Bob said later, was it the light? Was he trying to go to the light? So Bob said, Dad, maybe we should try counting to 3. Take 3 big breaths together and then just drop your body and go. You can't go to the light and take your body with you. And he said, I know, I feel stuck. Can you help me? And so Bob said, let's give it a try. And Dad whispered to him, okay. Well, to be honest, my mom and I were listening to this and nothing about it sounded like my dad was really about to pass away. But both of them seemed to think they could make it happen. We didn't know what to do. So we just stood at the door and listened. Bob said, okay, Dad, the first big deep breath. Are you ready? 1, and then inhale and exhale. 2, big deep breaths. 3, a big breath. I love you, Dad. And then silence. And then we hear my dad whisper, I'm still here, Bob. Well, it brought such laughter for my mom and I, but Bob and my dad were kind of serious about making this happen to the point that he talked Bob into trying it 2 more times. I'm still here, Bob. It became one of the stories we told to remember, funny stories that we remember and tell over and over. And it helps us not fall too deep into our own sadness when we miss him. So a few tips we learned or discovered that might be something else for you to keep in mind. When hospice came and bathed my dad each day while lying in his bed, they would wash and dry his back really well. Then they would put lotion on it, always watching his skin to be sure it stayed healthy. And as it became more and more painful for my dad to keep turning on one side and then turning on the other throughout the bath, and then to get dry, then to put lotion on, and then to put his pajama shirt on, the hospice nurse asked us if she could cut his pajama shirts straight up the back. So he had an easier time getting him on from the front and didn't have to wrestle during the process. Of course, we said, of course. And it worked like a dream. So keep that tip in mind when you feel yourself having to shuffle them and it causes pain sometimes. Second tip, because of that sweet tooth that happens at the end, we kept candy by my dad's bedside and let him have as much of it as he wanted. At this point, who cared about his blood sugar levels? I will tell you that he ate a lot of chocolates on Valentine's Day, including the box we got for him to give to my mom. We filled a dish full of jelly beans, and he ate all the jelly beans. And he had a dish of peppermint candies, and he enjoyed that too. Speaking of Valentine's Day, he made Bob promise to buy my mom flowers, a heart-shaped box of chocolates from the drugstore, and give them to her every year on Valentine's Day from him. Bob fulfilled that promise for all the 10 Valentine's Days that she went on without him until they were reunited in their next big adventure. Okay, the third tip. In his last weeks, it was really hard for Dad to swallow. Obviously, we gave him soft foods or even soft, sweet foods, but as a part of that process, swallowing was really challenging. And then we noticed when he used a straw to swallow water to get fluids, he also had to use the straw to swallow the medication that he was still taking. Just an FYI, usually hospice allows you to take him off most of the medications they're on, and the only ones are to keep them out of pain. And so we had been giving him some of his pain pills using a straw, and it was just almost impossible. And then I watched him and realized that it wasn't the swallowing that made it hard. He was not getting water all the way up to the top of the straw because he had grown so weak. So we had tried just not using the straw, and the cup was just spilling everywhere. So I cut the straw in half and put it in and held it in the cup, and he had the strength to get it halfway up the straw and was able to get his water in and his medication down. So that was a good tip to keep in mind if you see that they're struggling to drink through a straw. It might be that they don't have enough breath to get it all the way up through that long straw. A fourth tip, during the last weeks and days, we had so many of our family and friends wanting to know how is he doing, particularly close family who couldn't be here and wanted to wait in order to come to the funeral to make their travel arrangements. It was hard for all of them not to be with us, and it was hard for us to keep taking all the calls. So we had a big family text thread, and we updated every morning and every night. But when I was talking to one of my nephews, I realized that he really wanted to feel and be more a part of things. So I suggested to all of them, all of our family, that if they wanted to do so, they could go get a candle that was in a safe open glass candle holder so that it could stay lit 24/7 if they felt comfortable leaving it lit, and that they were to pick their favorite photograph of my dad or my dad and them, or whatever favorite photo in general made them feel especially close, and to put that photo next to the candle and light it. And then each time they passed by, they could say a prayer and they could feel connected to my dad's spirit. All the ones that did that said it made them feel so much closer and connected to him, and thanked me for the suggestion. I've passed that on to countless families since then and got the same response. So if that's something you think you might want to try, it's a very good way to include loved ones to feel close and a part of it. Last, if you're wondering what they might be thinking about, I'm going to tell you what is the top 5. I will tell you, after going through these experiences, I really became interested in this sacred passage. I became very impressed with the ease and the beauty and the gifts and the love that I experienced. And I decided to become a certified death doula. And it's how to help families do things that help them when their loved one is passing, but also how to help them or sit with the loved one when they need a time away and just need someone to sit with them while they're taking care of themselves, or to sit with them and have some of these hard conversations. But here is what I learned as a death doula. The things that they might be thinking about are love and forgiveness. They will be doing a life review, which includes moments they're proud of and moments maybe they wish they had gone differently. They're thinking about unfinished conversations and hidden emotional wounds. They are thinking about worries about the people they're leaving behind, especially a spouse. They're also thinking about their spirituality and their faith. So those are the things they're thinking about. Give them the space to work through that and respect that. Also, some other things to share. Often you will hear reports of them seeing loved ones present, sensing that the veil is thinning, like loved ones are coming through. You might feel a sense of peace that settles into their room near the end, and that can feel like the loved ones who are there bring love and peace with them. When you speak with hospice nurses, they tell story after story of patients waiting for permission to pass for a certain person to arrive. I know with my husband's mother, when she was dying, we had to tell her that her daughter was not going to make it and it was okay to go. And that was her last night. So they do seem to need to know even when they're not conscious. There's things that they really most want to hear. And that would include saying, thank you for loving me. Thank you for being my dad or my mom. They want to hear it's okay to go when you're ready. They need sometimes that permission. It's okay. It's okay. My husband had to say that to his dad the night before we all got on a plane to fly to be by his side, knowing his death was imminent. And he said, Dad, I know you're suffering. It's okay to go. And we got the call that he had passed away as we were leaving for the airport. Another thing that they need to hear is that we will be okay. We will miss you, but we will be okay. They need to hear you mattered and maybe tell them why. And last, if needed, they might need to hear, Dad, I forgive you. Mom, I forgive you. Sweetheart, I forgive you. It's also important to know that there will be gifts. I think there's a book out there that talks about this, but gifts begin to appear. And Carol, my mentor, told me, you've got to get through your grief so that you're present for your father. He has gifts to give you. And I didn't really understand quite what that meant, but I learned as we went along on this journey. The closer it gets, the more that those gifts will appear. Please don't make the mistake of saying that it's just them being delusional because they're on pain medication. It can look that way. Yes, it can. And you can believe that and not believe that maybe the pain medication is helping them take away the ego's veil that separates us, and they actually do see beyond the veil. Who knows? My belief is that they are seeing beyond the veil in their last days. Their ancestors will come, whether they see them or not, or you believe it or not. Their ancestors come for them. You will feel their presence if you're still and you're aware and you're open. You may be told who is there. Don't argue with that and don't dismiss it. Messages from spirit might appear on your path both before and after their death. My dad still leaves messages for me all the time now. My mom uses clouds to communicate with me. I know it sounds crazy, but I have proof. Some gifts might include forgiveness, sometimes after decades have passed. Another gift is to feel a depth of love that you didn't even know you could reach, to experience a tenderness inside that makes you so much more compassionate. You can get more clarity about your own values and priorities and relationships and purpose. You get to witness what it looks like to surrender and what it feels like to be blessed with grace along the way. Death has a way of stripping away the illusion. Whether it is God, the spirit, the soul, you sense the mystery beyond the veil. So whatever you do, watch for the gifts. It was a cold March day. He had just cleaned up from dinner, and Dad had been asleep since yesterday. There was a sense of peace that fell over all of us. I felt it. My mom felt it. I knew deep down when I kissed him goodnight that it would be my final kiss goodbye. His breathing had changed. I had listened to it over the monitor as I was laying awake, counting how many breaths per minute so I could keep track through the night. Exactly 4 breaths, 1 breath every 15 seconds. I listened as my mom was whispering to him for a couple of hours before she finally said it was time for her to go to bed. Then I heard her saying her prayers, and soon I too fell asleep. Suddenly, something woke me up. I looked at the clock. It was 3:33 a.m. I didn't hear him breathing, so I waited, counting. 15 seconds turned into 30, and it turned into 1 minute. I woke Bob and said, I think he's gone, and we went downstairs, and he was gone. We woke my mom, and we entered into a very surreal space that comes when the spirit leaves the body, but the body is still here. But they're not. They're not here, but where? We called the hospice nurse who had to come over to call the time of death. We waited for her because from there she called the funeral home. It was in the early morning hours just before sunrise that the hearse came and took him away. I watched until I couldn't see it anymore, using every bit of strength I had. And then came the sunrise and more tears. They say that grief is the price we pay for loving someone. I had not felt grief quite like that before. I appreciated the awareness and the time we had to prepare for it. I couldn't believe it, but I was grateful that cancer gave us not 6, but 9 months for our time together to prepare, to say what needed to be said, to make memories that needed to be made, to have reunions and celebrations that needed one more visit, to cherish what needed to be cherished. I was grateful for every moment of those 9 precious months that I was able to walk my dad home and the peace that followed. My dad taught me more in those 9 months than my entire life prior. He taught me that it's okay to be afraid, but it's not okay to avoid your fear. That connection comes through honesty and openness and vulnerability. That it's okay to receive and to let others give you care. Something that I've had to practice just this year. He taught me that goodbyes are hard, but we are never really separate. And that words matter in the end. You can't say I love you too many times in life. That it happens fast. Living to the age of 88, he said, it happens fast. Don't waste a minute. Dream big dreams. Love the people who love you back. He taught us to remember to laugh, to lighten up, because this is all just really one big illusion and life continues like a river ever flowing. He taught me the importance of living true to my values and to practice forgiveness every day, to stay in my integrity and to plan ahead. It wasn't easy for him to leave us behind. He loved life so much. It made our parting bittersweet. But he loved God more, and he lived his faith and counted on it to carry him over that mystic sea. I love you, Dad. The reality is that you will grieve forever. You will not get over the loss. You will learn to carry it. You will heal. You will rebuild yourself around the loss that you have suffered. That's a quote from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and David Kessler. So remember, my friend, rest, to breathe, to make time to take care of yourself, and be so very kind to your soul. As always, with love. In the show notes, there's a link for you to go to. I've recorded a meditation that might give you support if you are walking someone you love home. I hope it helps. Thanks. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart, and I just need to share this with you right now. Please know this podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help, because you matter, you are important, and most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself, and do so with love.